Good morning, YouTube. This is Dave Krov. Welcome to my weekly 52 Cues vlog check-in. It is the end of week 5, and so I'm going to be talking about the cue that I wrote last week. Actually, the cue that I finished up last week, because a lot of times you have kind of cues in different phases of production, and so this is a cue that I was finally able to finish and get off to a publisher. This was called Grizzly Adams, and I'll be talking about this here in just a second. It's an Americana tension cue, so it's ominous tension with sprinkles of folk instruments, in this case blues harmonica. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk about something that has really stuck with me kind of all week. I guess I could stop the really dour, intense music. Something which has really stuck with me all week, and that was a comment from my first YouTube video that I posted, my week 1 video, and Dapper Chap Music says, "You're like the Bob Ross of library composition. Thank you for your generosity with your knowledge and your humility too. It's a lovely cue." First of all, thank you so much for listening, Dapper Chap. I love that name. That's a cool username. And at first I was like, man, I love Bob Ross. Man, Bob Ross is great. Who doesn't love some Bob Ross and Joy of Painting and all of that? But it really stuck with me. The compliment really, and I take that as super high praise, because I love Bob Ross. I watched Bob Ross religiously growing up. And if you don't know who Bob Ross is, here's a picture of Bob Ross so that you can kind of get that in your mind. And we'll put links to Bob Ross and the Joy of Painting in our in the description below. But it really stuck with me, and I could not stop thinking about Bob Ross, and it got me really kind of thinking about how we as production music composers should absolutely be like Bob Ross. And I came up with 5 ways we as production music composers should all be like Bob Ross. And I wanted to talk about it. So this is what's been going on with me all week. First of all, and the biggest thing that I think, the biggest takeaway, and one of the through lines of my professional career, is don't put pressure on yourself to make art. And I'm using cheesy air quotes, but don't put pressure on yourself to make art. Just focus on the craft. Just focus on getting better at what you're doing. Just focus on the experience of doing it. Bob Ross showed up every single week, and he painted the same types of paintings, right? He showed up. There's going to be mountains. There's probably going to be happy clouds, happy trees. And he did that week in and week out. And you never once doubted his skill with the brush. You never once doubted the artistry that he puts into his work. And I don't think he really cared whether or not it was high art or not. He just focused on making the music, or in this case, he just focused on making the painting. He focused on the act of the craft. I think that as composers, we put too much pressure on ourselves to make art, especially in the production music world, because by the very nature of the type of music we write, a lot of it is very iterative. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean that pejoratively, but a lot of what we do is iterative. When a library wants you to write 15 dramedy hip-hop cues, they all need to sound great, well-produced, good melodies, hooks, and all of that. But they all still need to work with the similar type of scene, whether it's a slap fight, on a cooking show or a dating show or something like that, whatever. So when we get bogged down into thinking, oh, I've got to make art, we get in our own way, and that's a really big pressure. That's a pressure to kind of put on yourself, that every time you open up a DAW that you've got to say it'd be the most original, amazing thing ever to come out. And again, we want it to be good, but don't put pressure on yourself to make high art. just focus on picking up the brush, picking up, opening the DAW, putting your hands on an instrument, picking up a guitar or something, and just making music, and let that kind of guide the way. The second way that I think that we could all stand to be more like Bob Ross is be generous with your time. Be generous. Give feedback. Provide tips. Give back. If possible, mentor. Now, if you're not a teacher, that's okay. I've been teaching, specifically, I've been teaching higher education for almost 20 years. I guess it is 20 years actually. And so it's baked into me. It's one of the reasons I do this YouTube channel is I just love teaching. I love giving back. But be generous with your time. If somebody asks you to listen to a cue, check it out. Listen to it. It's one of the things that we do at 52 Cues in the Facebook group that this whole kind of thing is predicated on. This vlog is putting our stuff out there and giving feedback. Admittedly, I could be better at this. I could absolutely be better at this. But there's also another way that you can be generous with your time, and that is with your clients, with the people you're working for. If they need an edit, or if they need something that needs to be tweaked, that maybe will take you an extra 15 or 20 minutes. I think that it's best to err on the side of being generous without being taken advantage of. There's a line there, and there's scope creep and all of that. I'm not talking about that. Here, case in point, I do a podcast production, and I made some changes, and I was given some options by the client, and here, take your pick. And so I did that. I put things together and posted out everything, and it was all great. And after it was posted and published, well, we really wanted to go this direction with this. And so part of me gets a little prickly with that, because I'm like, well, no, this is my time, and my time is valuable. And I'm not talking about, again, I'm not talking about being taken advantage of. I'm talking about when you have a client who has been good to you, or you're wanting to be good to them, and you're just wanting to help the relationship along. And so I'm going to make the change. It will probably take all of 10 minutes to do. Is it going back in and changing things? Yes. But it's a small tweak that will go a long way towards the relationship building aspect of working with my client. We recently had a piano tuner over to our church, and he tuned up the piano, and then we called on Saturday. We were about to do a special memorial service, and we called up on Saturday because something was weird with the piano. And he came over, and we threw up the bat signal, and he dropped everything and came over. And he worked on the piano, and I said, please send us a bill. He's like, I'm not going to send you a bill. Yes, he drove out there. And yes, he got down under the piano and tools and all that stuff. He serviced the piano. He says, I'm not going to send you a bill because you're one of my regulars. You're one of my clients. And this is all part of me taking care of you and taking care of your piano. So I feel like, going back to Bob Ross is exceedingly generous with his time. And I think we can be generous with our time as well. Giving back, mentoring, providing feedback. If you're able to bring a young composer up beside you and pour into them just a little bit, you'd be really surprised at how much you will receive back. Which leads me to the next way we could be like Bob Ross, which is be kind and, above all, be easy to work with. There are times when you are right. There are times when you will be proven right. There are times when the client is wrong, the publisher is wrong. There are times when they will ask you to do things which you vehemently disagree with. There will be times when they will ask you to change something, and you will shake your fists to the universe and claim that they are destroying the work. And that might be true. But keep that Keep that kind of to yourself and work on that relationship and make sure that you don't let your ego, your pride kind of get in the way of what is ultimately a partnership. And if they're wrong, they're wrong. And if they're wrong so many times that it's starting to become, financially risky, then maybe it's time to stop the relationship. Not by, torching it and burning the bridge you're standing on, but yeah, there are times to evaluate relationships like that. But I have found, especially working with publishers, that the easier you can be to work with, then the more likely they are to work with you. Because this industry is full of very, very talented people. And talent is really, it takes a lot more than talent. It takes a lot more than compositional chops to be successful in the industry. You got to be easy to work with. People have to enjoy working with you because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. And if you're kind of a jerk or a diva, you roll in like, it's your way or the highway, then you might get that first gig, but maybe not the second one. So be kind, be easy to work with. Check your ego, check your pride before you send back that nasty email. Maybe put it in the draft folder and come back to it tomorrow. All right, number 4, the fourth way that I think that we as production music composers need to be more like Bob Ross is to be okay with happy accidents. And this comes back to the don't put pressure on yourself to make art, but be okay with happy accidents. Be okay with you have a beautiful painting and you're trying something new, and at first it doesn't work out, but you end up learning something either about yourself or about your craft, or the painting becomes something else. The cue becomes something else. If you've watched Joy of Painting with Bob Ross, there's always, in every painting, every episode, there's always one moment when you're watching and it's all going great. And you're like, okay, painting's done. There's still 10 minutes left in the episode. What's happening? And he usually reaches for the knife. And he will just, you know what? This is a lovely mountainside, but we're going to put a big, giant tree right in the foreground. He'll grab the putty knife and just go right down the center. And you think, what did you do? You ruined the painting. But that always turned into something really, really wonderful. And I think we need to be more willing to take risks and to be okay with pushing into these types of areas and being okay to kind of throw something into a cue that may or may not work. That's how you find out. A lot of times you'll learn something about the DAW, you'll learn something about yourself. Right? If you don't know how to play guitar, or if you've never recorded harmonica or something like that, then grab one and just start making music. I am definitely not a guitarist. Despite what's hanging in the background, I'm not a guitarist. But I'm also not afraid to put my hands on an instrument and see what happens. And then finally, the fifth way that I think production music composers can be like Bob Ross is to just keep painting. Just keep writing. Don't focus on what's getting air. Don't focus on what's getting placed. Don't focus on what's getting published. Don't focus on the mix. And what I mean is like endlessly listening and tweaking and listening and yes, there's a time for that. There's a time for evaluation, but there's also a time to write, submit, forget, and repeat. You write it, you put it out there, you give it to the universe, you've published it, you've released it, and then move on to the next thing. Just keep painting. Just keep picking up the brush, putting it on the canvas. If you can, write a little every day. And if you can't write a little, then at least read about the industry. Read if you can get into a forum and just allow this to be in your consciousness at some point every single day. If possible, write. But just keep painting. Just keep writing. Just keep at it. I promise you'll get better at it. You'll get faster at it. You'll learn a lot about yourself, a lot about your work habits, and a lot about how to sustain yourself through, the creative droughts. If you're not feeling necessarily inspired. If you sit down to write some every single day without the pressure of art, right? Then you would be really surprised when those happy accidents start occurring. So I would encourage you to just keep painting, just keep writing. So those are the ways that I feel like I strive to be like Bob Ross, and I think that we could all, as production music composers, can strive to be more like Bob Ross. Again, thanks Dapper Chap Music for that high compliment, and it's really resonated with me. And because I have little Funko Pops that are hanging around kind of everywhere in my studio, I had to buy a Bob Ross Funko Pop, kind of as like as a totem of this concept of how we can be more like Bob Ross. All right, so let's check out the cue. Grizzly Adams that I wrote last week. By the way, if you have any questions, comments, or whatever, you can absolutely leave those in the comments below. I make every effort to respond. I absolutely read every single one of those, so you can leave those behind. So we have here Grizzly Adams, and let's take a quick listen, and then I will talk about the cue. So that was Grizzly Adams. Again, it is an ominous tension cue with Americana type elements, and in this case, the Americana elements are some blues harp that I recorded just directly into the interface through a Green Bullet Shure mic, just bending notes and everything. And so just a quick pass through some of the sounds. This is an Omnisphere patch, right? Going for an out of tune honky tonk kind of saloon type piano sound. I've got some more Omnisphere bell hits. By the way, I've said this before, man, but Omnisphere, if you write tension cues, scrape up the dollars and get you some Omnisphere. These are some Evo strings. These are by Spitfire, and Evo strings I've talked about on my channel before. They're slow evolving patches. And so for these type of really long flautando type of effects, they're absolutely fabulous. Have another Omnisphere texture pad here that responds to the mod wheel. And so you'll hear it kind of, you'll hear it bark here in just a second. Oh, that's not the barking one. The barking one must be obviously one of the other ones. That just has the high. Yeah, that's another Omnisphere patch. And I'm doing these at the phrase here so that an editor would have points to be able to edit cuts and such too. So Omnisphere, kind of high pad, some guitar, yet another Omnisphere pad, low guitar, single guitar hit with lots of ambient reverb and sound. Low sub synth. Some more Evo strings. These are the low Evo strings. Same patch, just separated in octaves. And every 4 bars and every phrase rather, I'm looking to kind of build on it there. This is the Thunderdrum instrument by Sonic Couture. Really, really interesting patch. And I love Sonic Couture. They're a little boutique sample company, and if you've not checked them out, really, really cool stuff. And so that is Thunderdrum. Really, really good for this type of sound. Okay, this is Action Strikes. These impacts. This is a very industry standard sound library that gets used a lot. And then some cymbal effects, where I have gone and done some bowed cymbal work. And if you look kind of behind me, there's a cymbal there that I just bow. And with this, I used one of these guys. This is Mike Balter. This is essentially a rubber bouncy ball on a stick. And so I use these on the back of that frame drum, the 22-inch frame drum, to create that kind of whale song, kind of Dory speak kind of thing. That's what's going on with all of those, and doing those at the phrase points. So at the 4-bar marks, so that, like I said, so an editor can really use those. Really drench that in reverb and delay. Can pull that off, get the nice sounds there. So that was Grizzly Adams. That was a cue that I wrapped up last week, and that was my week 5. Just to recap on, or to follow up on a couple of things, the loose threads. Last week I worked on those 5 cues for the Super Bowl, and I'm happy to report that I did get 3 plays during the Super Bowl broadcast on CBS. So a huge shout out to RR Hot and friends at Unified Sounds. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Really, really excited about that. And yeah, I thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful for you. And I know this one was kind of a long one. Again, thanks to Dapper Chat Music for likening me to Bob Ross and sending me down a rabbit hole of self-reflection. What I have coming up this week, more Americana tension cues. I imagine you will probably get another one of these next week as I go to push through this album. I've got 6 or 7 cues already done, and I need to write about 8 more for those. So that'll do it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, peace.